After 3 years of marriage, I thought I had the perfect relationship in the world. My husband was considerate, gentle, and successful in his career. Until that night, when he was on the balcony on the phone and forgot to close the door. She's just a tool to get what I want from the Chi family. Once I get what I want, this marriage will be over. I stood in the living room, barefoot, with the recording button on my phone glowing red. I recorded every word for 43 minutes. After hanging up, he went back to the room and kissed my forehead goodnight. I smiled. Mrs. Chi's kindness and virtue, they're gone forever. Starting tonight. 1:17 a.m. Chi Yen turned over, feeling the cold space beside her on the pillow. Li Zhizhou wasn't there. She opened her eyes. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and faint voices came from the living room. Chi Yen didn't move. For 3 years, Li Zhizhou had never answered calls in the middle of the night. No matter how urgent matters at work were, he would wait until the next morning to deal with them. He once said, "No matter how important work is, it can't disturb my wife's sleep." Back then, Chi Yen thought she had married the best man in the world. Now, barefoot, she tiptoed to the back of the bedroom door. The living room's floor-to-ceiling windows had no curtains, and the moonlight streamed in. Li Zhizhou's silhouette appeared on the balcony's glass door. One hand was in the pocket of his pajamas, the other holding a cigarette. He never smoked at home. Chi Yan's fingers clenched. "Yeah. It's almost done." Li Zhizhou's voice drifted in from the balcony. The door wasn't closed tightly, so the wind carried his words to Chi Yan's ears one by one. "The contract with the Chi family will be signed next week. Once that's done, the approval for the land in Jiangdong should also arrive." He paused. "Yen, don't worry. I told you, once this step is completed, everything else will fall into place." Yen. Chi Yen felt as though someone had poured a bucket of ice water over her back. She recognized that name. When Yan Li Zhizhou's college classmate, they had met at the company's annual party. Back then, Li Zhizhou introduced her as my senior from the same club. Chi Yen had even smiled and toasted her with her glass. Li Zhizhou laughed. The tip of his cigarette glowed in the darkness. "Just a tool. Once the Chi family's resources are in our hands, this marriage will be over too." Chi Yen leaned her hands against the wall, her nails digging into the wallpaper. "Didn't I tell you? Chi Yen is a fool without any brains. Other than the family wealth her father left her, there's nothing worth clinging to. Don't worry. Once this round of financing is over." He changed his posture, leaning against the balcony railing. "At most half a year. After that, we'll figure things out then. I'm even willing to leave empty-handed. After all, everything is already in my hands." Whatever was said on the other end made Li Zhizhou laugh again. What can she do? Chi Heng is such an idiot. Always busy with cars. Chi Yan's father's health is getting worse by the day. Once the old man passes away, the Chi family will be nothing but a shell. I've already brought over the core team. What's there to fear? Chi Yen stood in the darkness, motionless. Her breathing was faint and slow, as though she feared even a slight sigh might reveal her presence. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She raised her hand. The phone screen lit up, and the red dot of the recording app blinked. 00:02:34. She had already recorded for 2.5 minutes. Chi Yen held her phone tightly, went back to the bedroom, lay down again, and pressed the phone under her pillow. The recording button remained on. She stared at the ceiling, counting each second. 15 minutes later, the balcony finally fell silent. Footsteps approached, and the bedroom door was gently pushed open. Li Zhizhou came over to the bed, bringing with him a hint of cool air and cigarette smoke. He wiped his hands with a tissue and put a mint in his mouth, actions that Chi Yen used to think were signs of his cleanliness. Now, she knew they were ways of destroying evidence. The mattress sank as he got into bed. Chi Yen kept her eyes closed, trying to steady her breathing. A cool hand touched her forehead, pushing her hair aside. "Asleep?" he whispered. Chi Yen didn't move. His lips touched her forehead. "Good night." Chi Yen clenched her fists under the blanket. Her nails dug into her flesh, causing a dull pain to radiate from her palms. She didn't open her eyes. Li Zhizhou's breathing gradually stabilized. Chi Yen waited for 40 full minutes, ensuring the person beside her was sound asleep, before reaching for her phone from beneath the pillow. Recording duration: 43 minutes and 17 seconds. She stared at the number. a faint smile forming on her lips. It wasn't a bitter smile. It was the kind of quiet, bone-chilling smile that comes after everything has been thoroughly considered. 3 years. 1,095 days. She rejected her study abroad offer, gave up her position as a management trainee at Chi Corporation, and willingly became Madam Lee for 3 years. She did the laundry, cooked meals, ironed shirts, and remembered which tie went with each of his suits. When he worked late into the night, she would simmer soup while waiting by the door. He got drunk from socializing, and she knelt on the bathroom floor to wipe his face. He said, "I don't like it when my wife shows herself in public." So she withdrew from all social activities. Her social media profile remained unchanged for 3 years. Chi Yen turned off her phone screen. In the darkness, she heard her own heartbeat steady and strong. It wasn't anger. Anger was too petty. What she felt was more like waking from a 3-year dream. It wasn't like being stabbed by a knife. It was like realizing she'd been lying on the operating table all along, with someone who wasn't a doctor performing the surgery. Chi Yen copied the recording 3 times. One copy was sent to her personal email. Another was stored in the cloud storage service. With only she knowing the password, the original file remained on her phone. After doing this, she lay back down and closed her eyes. Starting tomorrow, Chi Tai would begin living a different life. At 7:10 the next morning, when Li Zhezhou came out of the bathroom, Chi Yen was already in the kitchen. She wore a white apron, her hair casually tied back. Bacon and eggs were frying in the pan. The moment the toast popped out of the toaster, she caught it neatly and arranged it on a plate, just like every other morning for the past 1,000 mornings. Waking up so early, Li Zhezhou stepped forward, putting his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. His body smelled of shower gel, warm and clean, the scent Chi Yen had loved the most over the past 3 years. As she inhaled it now, her stomach twisted slightly, but nothing showed on her face. "I slept well last night, so I woke up naturally," Chi Yen said, flipping the eggs with her usual gentle voice. "Going to the office today?" I have a meeting this morning." Li Zhezhou released her, sat down at the dining table, and picked up his phone to check messages. Chi Yen brought over breakfast, sat across from him, and took a bite of toast. She looked at the man across from her, well-proportioned features, sharp eyebrows, thin lips. 32 years old, the perfect age for a man. His hair was still slightly damp, and the collar of his shirt was slightly open. He resembled any decent, wife-loving husband. "By the way," Li Zhezhou said, raising his head, "your father's birthday is next Saturday. I've asked my secretary to reserve a private room at Chisakadai." Chi Yan's hand paused. Next Saturday. The contract with the Chi family was to be signed next week. While planning things related to the Chi family, he still had to go to his father-in-law's birthday party. "Okay." Chi Yen smiled. "My father will definitely be happy." "Of course," Li Zhezhou said, placing his hand on top of hers. His thumb gently stroked her fingers. "Your father is like my own father." Chi Yen stared at his hand. Slender, with well-defined fingers and neatly trimmed nails. It was this very hand that put the ring on her finger on the day he proposed 3 years ago. She raised her eyes, a smile appearing on her lips. "Li Zhezhou. You're so good to me." Li Zhezhou smiled, raising his hand to tickle the tip of her nose. "Silly. You're my wife. If I'm not good to you, then to whom should I be good?" Chi Yen lowered her head, dipped a piece of toast into the egg yolk, and chewed slowly. The taste was like chewing wax, but she swallowed it, her expression gentle and contented. After Li Zhezhou left, Chi Yen cleaned up the kitchen, folded her apron, and sat down on the sofa. The living room was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow on the carpet. She took out her phone and opened the contacts list. She scrolled past Dad and Chiheng, until she stopped at one name. Han Mingzhou. It's been 3 years since we last talked. Chi Yen stared at that name for a long time. Han Mingzhou, Chi Yan's college friend and once the legal advisor for the Chi Group. 3 years ago, when Chi Yen got married, Han Mingzhou resigned and opened his own law firm in Shanghai. Chi Yen still doesn't know the reason for his resignation. She asked him once, and Han Mingzhou simply said, "I wanted a change of environment." After that, Chi Yen became a full-time mother, and her social circle grew smaller and smaller. She never called him again. Chi Yan's thumb hovered over the dial, 3 seconds later. She pressed it. Beep. 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 The call connected on the fourth ring. Chi Yen. The voice sounded deeper than 3 years ago, but unmistakably his. Han Mingzhou always spoke in a calm, unhurried manner, as if everything was under control. Han Mingzhou, said Chi Yen, her voice calmer than she expected. I have a case I'd like to discuss with you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. What kind of case? Marital dispute, said Chi Yen. It involves property transfers, contract fraud, and possibly business espionage as well. There was a 3-second silence on the line. You're talking about your own situation, said Han Mingzhou. It wasn't a question. Chi Yen didn't deny it. Is it convenient to meet in person? She asked. Where are you? At home. Emerald Bay. I'm returning by flight this afternoon, said Han Mingzhou. No. I've changed my plans. I'll arrive in 2 hours. The call ended. Chi Yen stared at the darkened screen. Something in her throat loosened slightly. It wasn't emotion. It was certainty. She had been a full-time housewife for 3 years. But that didn't mean she had wasted those 3 years. Chi Yen put down her phone, went to the study, and pulled out a folder from the bottom shelf of the bookcase. Inside were the documents she had gathered over those 3 years. Chi's quarterly financial reports, and a diagram of Li Zizhou's company's ownership structure. A few contract covers she accidentally took pictures of. And then there was a photo of a bank transfer receipt she found by chance in Li Zizhou's study half a year ago. The amount was 2 million. And the recipient was a company she'd never heard of before. She hadn't thought much of it back then. Now, everything made sense. Chi Yen placed the file bag on the coffee table and leaned back in the sofa. The sunlight warmed her body. She closed her eyes, her lips curling slightly. Li Zizhou, you're right. Chi Tai really doesn't have much brains. But Chi Yen does. When Han Mingzhou arrived, he was 20 minutes earlier than he had said he would be. When the doorbell rang, Chi Yen was changing clothes. She was wearing a simple black high-neck sweater, with her hair loose and no makeup on. She opened the door. Han Mingzhou stood outside, dressed in a dark gray coat with a black high-neck sweater underneath matching hers exactly. He carried a briefcase in one hand and had the other in his pocket. The cold wind messed up his hair slightly. It had been 3 years since they last met. He seemed thinner, with a more defined jawline. There was a faint blue tint under his eyes, probably from not getting enough rest while rushing to catch his flight. Come in, Chi Yen said, stepping aside to let him in. Han Mingzhou entered and glanced around the living room. It was tastefully decorated in warm colors, with every detail reflecting a sense of home. There was a photo of the two of them on the fridge. Next to the shoe cabinet stood a pair of men's leather shoes and a pair of women's slippers. He looked away, saying nothing. Chi Yen poured him a glass of water, then pushed the file bag on the coffee table toward him. Listen to the recording first, she said. The phone was placed on the coffee table with the speaker turned on. Li Zizhou's voice filled the living room. She's just a tool. Now that the Chi family's resources are in my hands, this marriage is over too. That woman Chi Yen isn't very smart. Chi Yen showed no expression. She observed Han Mingzhou. Han Mingzhou remained seated on the sofa, one hand on the armrest, the other on his knee, but his fingers gradually tightened, and veins appeared on the back of his hands. At the 12-minute mark, Li Zizhou mentioned that idiot Qiheng. Han Mingzhou's eyebrows twitched. The recording ended after 43 minutes. The living room fell silent again. Han Mingzhou didn't speak right away. He took a sip of water from his glass and put it down. When did this happen? Last night, around 1 a.m. Did he not know you heard him? No, he didn't. Han Mingzhou nodded, then took out the documents from the folder and began flipping through them page by page. Chi Yen didn't hurry him. 5 minutes later, Han Mingzhou put the documents down. When did you start collecting these? Over time, Chi Yen replied. The earliest financial report summary is from 1.5 years ago. I had no particular reason for keeping it back then. I just took a photo of it out of curiosity. The contract with Chi's group is to be signed next week. That's what he said on the phone last night. Han Mingzhou leaned back on the sofa and looked at her. His eyes were deep, giving off a penetrating gaze, not an inspection, but an assessment. He was trying to determine how much of what she said was true and how stable her emotions were. What do you plan to do? He asked. Chi Yen had already thought it through. 3 steps, she said, raising her finger. First, Gather evidence. Recording is just the beginning. I need more. His relationship with Wen Yan. The chain of financial transfers. And how many people he's managed to poach from the Qi family. All these need to be documented. Secondly, stop the bleeding. He must not get his hands on that contract. My father's company cannot become his ATM. Thirdly, Qi Yan paused. Divorce. But not without getting something in return. Her voice was calm. He spent 3 years planning to take over the Qi family and then get rid of me. I'll make sure his efforts go to waste. Han Mingzhou looked at her. After a 2-second silence, he said, "You're much calmer than you were 3 years ago." Qi Yan didn't respond to that. "Is it possible?" she asked. Han Mingzhou stood up, unbuttoned his coat, and hung it on the armrest of the sofa. Then he pulled up a chair and sat across from the coffee table. In a professional manner, the legal validity of recordings depends on the circumstances. If they were recorded accidentally in your shared residence, they could serve as supplementary evidence. He opened his briefcase and took out a notebook and pen. The part about the fund transfer is quite important. Regarding that transfer of 2 million yuan you mentioned, what company was the recipient? I checked the business registration information. It's called Mingyuan Investment. The company was established less than a year ago, with a registered capital of 500,000 yuan. The legal representative is someone I don't know. Han Mingzhou wrote down the details. What about the shareholders? I couldn't find any information about them. I thought it had nothing to do with me. So I didn't investigate further. Qi Yan paused for a moment. But now that I think about it, the registered address of that company seems to be near the residential complex where Wen Yan lives. Han Mingzhou's pen stopped for a moment. Can you get access to Qi's company's financial records? No. After getting married, I stopped participating in company affairs, said Qi Yan. But my brother can. Qi Heng. Yes. Han Mingzhou frowned. Qi Yan knew what he was thinking. Qi Heng, the only son of the Qi family, was 2 years older than Qi Yan. He was the typical spoiled rich kid, speeding, playing cards, changing girlfriends faster than he changed cars. No one in the Qi family thought he was fit to take over the business. His father described him as too lazy to even be worth feeding. But Qi Yan knew his brother better. Qi Heng wasn't stupid. He was just lazy. Too lazy to care. Too lazy to fight. Too lazy to waste energy on scheming. But one thing was for sure. Qi Heng would protect those he cared about with his life. I'll handle my brother's side of things, Qi Yan said. For now. Help me find out more about that Mingyuan Investment Company. Han Mingzhou nodded and closed his notebook. One more thing, he said. What is it? From now on, your behavior at home must remain exactly as it was before. Qi Yan stared at him. Making soup, ironing shirts, asking him what time he'll be home, caring whether he's tired from work. Nothing can change. Not even a single glance. Han Mingzhou's tone was calm, as if he were describing the weather. Once you show any weakness, he'll move his assets and destroy the evidence. Faster than you can imagine. Such people. He paused. It took him 3 years to plan this. That shows he's extremely patient. You only get one chance to catch him off guard. You can't waste that chance. Qi Yan's fingers rested on her knees. I know, she said in a soft voice. Do you know what's the hardest part? Han Mingzhou asked. It's not gathering evidence, not hiring lawyers, and certainly not going to court. What then? It's that tonight, when he comes home, you'll still have to smile and ask him what he wants to eat. Qi Yan fell silent for a moment. Then she smiled. Not a bitter smile, but a thin, sharp smile like a blade. It's okay, she said. I've played the good wife for 3 years. A few more days won't make a difference. Han Mingzhou looked at her, something flashing in his eyes. But quickly, his usual coldness took over again. All right, he said. I'll leave now. I'll contact you as soon as I get the results. He stood up and put on his coat. Qi Yan accompanied him to the door. Han Mingzhou took one step forward, then stopped. Qi Yan. He didn't turn around. 3 years ago, on the day you got married, I knew something wasn't right. Qi Yan was momentarily stunned. Li Zhezhou is too perfect, Han Mingzhou said. Perfect to the point of being unreal. He left. Qi Yan leaned against the doorframe, watching the elevator doors close. She had felt something was off 3 years ago. Then why hadn't she said anything? The thought crossed her mind, and she laughed to herself. What would having said anything have changed? Back then, Qi Yan's entire heart and mind belonged to Li Zhizhou. Even if Han Mingzhou or even God himself had told her that this man had problems, she wouldn't have believed them. That's how infatuation works. Others' words go unheard. You only realize the pain when something really hurts. Qi Yan closed the door. She went to the living room, put away the file bag, washed the glass on the coffee table, and put it back in the cabinet. Everything returned to its normal state. It was as though no one had ever been there. She checked the time. 11 a.m. Li Zhizhou wouldn't be back for dinner at noon. He had a meeting at 3 p.m. and wouldn't arrive home until after 6 at the earliest. She still had time. Qi Yan picked up her phone and opened Qi Heng's WeChat profile. Her brother's profile picture was a red Ferrari, and his ID was "Bro Heng isn't a crab that walks sideways." The last message from him was from 2 months ago. Qi Heng had posted a photo of them playing cards, with the caption, "Need one more person. Want to join us? Sis." Qi Yan hadn't replied. Now, she typed, "Bro, are you free tonight? I'll take you out for barbecue." She sent the message. 3 seconds later, Qi Heng replied with a voice message. "Damn, it's my sister who's offering to pay. The sun's coming up in the west. Who bullied you? Tell me." Qi Yan's lips twitched slightly. She typed, "No one bullied me. I just want to talk to you." Qi Heng sent another voice message. "Your tone seems strange. Like you're about to ask me for money. Let me make it clear up front. I just lost 200,000 last month. No loans." "Then that's fine. What time? Where?" 7 o'clock. "The usual place." "Got it." Qi Yan put down her phone and went to the kitchen. There were still the pork ribs she bought yesterday in the fridge. She put on an apron, washed her hands, and began preparing dinner. Li Zhizhou loved lotus root and pork rib soup. It took 2 hours to simmer, and the soup turned a milky white color. Qi Yan blanched the pork ribs and cut the lotus root into pieces. She put everything in the pot with cold water. Her movements were smooth and effortless. Just like every noon over the past 3 years, steam rose from the lid of the pot. Qi Yan stood in front of the stove, staring at her hands. Her fingers were delicate, and the wedding ring was still on her ring finger. It was a Cartier ring. Li Zhizhou had put it on her in front of over 100 people on their wedding day. She turned the ring around her finger. She didn't take it off. Not yet. 6:40 in the evening. Qi Yan poured the prepared soup into a thermos bottle. Li Zhizhou returned earlier than expected today. At 6 o'clock. He sent a message. "Meeting ended early. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Qi Yan replied with a smiling emoji. Then she stood in front of the mirror and checked herself out. She wore a cream-colored knitted top. Her hair was loose, and she had light pink lipstick on her lips. Gentle, homey, inoffensive, like a little lamb that has no idea it's about to be sold. The door lock clicked. Li Zhizhou entered, carrying a bag of fruit. "I bought you cherries," he said, handing her the bag. "They just arrived today. 3J variety." Qi Yan took the bag and kissed his cheek. "Thank you, honey." Li Zhizhou wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed her nose. "What are you cooking? It smells delicious." "Yes. Rib soup." "You're right." The two of them smiled at each other. The scene was as warm as that of a model couple in a TV drama. Qi Yan knew how fake all of this was. But right now, standing in this man's arms, smelling his pleasant perfume, she felt calm, not relief. It was the calmness of a hunter who sees his prey fall into the trap. At dinner, Li Zhizhou talked a little about work. "Have you been busy lately?" Qi Yan placed a piece of rib in his bowl. "Not too bad. There's a project to complete next week, so I might have to work a few extra days." Qi Yan nodded, looking worried. "Then take care of yourself and don't overwork yourself." "Don't worry," Li Zhizhou said, smiling after taking a sip of soup. "With this bowl of soup waiting for me at home, no amount of work will be too tiring." Qi Yan smiled and lowered her head to eat. The soup in her throat was so fishy that she almost threw up. 7 o'clock. Qi Yan said, "I'm going out to have dinner with a friend." Then changed into shoes and left. Li Zhizhou didn't even look up from the TV on the sofa. He merely said, "Come back early." Qi Yan replied and closed the door behind her. In the elevator, her expression turned cold. The barbecue stall was located in an old alley in the southern part of the city. It was dirty and messy, with flies and smoke everywhere, but the food was absolutely delicious. Chi Heng was already there. He sat at a plastic table in the corner, wearing a limited edition windbreaker. It didn't seem out of place at all. Chi Heng simply had an air of confidence that allowed him to blend in anywhere. There were already 3 bottles of beer on the table, with 1 bottle already opened. "I'm here," Chi Heng said, nodding toward the stool across from him. "Sit down yourself." Chi Yen sat down and pushed the menu aside. "Have you ordered anything?" "I ordered 50 skewers of lamb, 20 skewers of beef tendon, and 2 fish." Chi Heng took a bite of the toasted bun and said indistinctly, "Add whatever you want yourself." "No need." Chi Heng glanced at her. He put down the bun and wiped his hands with a napkin. "Speak up." "What?" "Stop acting around your brother." Chi Heng pushed a bottle of beer toward her. "He hasn't taken the initiative to invite me in 3 years. Every time we meet, it's at the same old place. There must be something wrong. What is it?" Chi Yen looked at the seemingly careless man before her. Suddenly, she felt like laughing. Everyone thought Chi Heng was good for nothing. Their father thought he was worthless. Li Zhizhou thought he was an idiot. But Chi Yen knew that her brother simply didn't want to waste effort on things that weren't worth it. "Brother, Li Zhizhou wants to take over the Qi Corporation." Chi Heng froze. The beer bottle hovered in midair, his gaze shifting from casual to sharp. Chi Yen had seen that kind of look before. In high school, someone blocked Chi Yen at the school gate. That was exactly the same look Chi Heng gave him when he rushed over like a knife drawn from its sheath. "Go on," Chi Yen said. He recounted everything from start to finish. The recording, Wen Yen, Mingyuan investment, poaching the core team, and next week's contract with the distributors. She spoke calmly and clearly, as if giving a work report. Chi Heng finished 1 bottle of beer, opened another, and drank half of it. The kebabs were brought over, but he didn't touch any. After Chi Yen finished speaking, Chi Heng slammed the beer bottle onto the table. "I knew it." His voice was filled with anger. "I always knew that Li wasn't trustworthy. 3 years ago, he pursued you relentlessly, even going so far as to approach Dad about a business deal. I told you then that something was wrong. But who listened to me? You or Dad?" Chi Yen didn't respond. Yes, Chi Heng had indeed said that back then. "He's too slick," he said. "There's no warmth in his eyes when he smiles." At the time, Chi Yen thought her brother was just jealous that she had found a good man. Now, she realizes Chi Heng is much better at judging people than she is. "Enough. Stop thinking about it," Chi Heng said, reading her thoughts. He waved his hand. "It's pointless to dwell on the past. Let's get to the point. What do you plan to do?" "I need you to help me investigate things within the Qi family," Chi Yen said. "Who were assigned by Li Zizhou? Are there any unusual withdrawals of funds? And that contract with the supplier next week, I won't sign it." Chi Heng replied firmly. "You can't simply refuse to sign." Chi Yen objected. "That would be too obvious. He'll suspect something. So what do you suggest?" "Delay it," Chi Yen said. "Find a reasonable excuse to postpone the signing. Claim that the technical review hasn't been completed, or that the legal department has found issues with the terms. Any excuse will do, as long as it's reasonable." Chi Heng stared at her. "You've changed," he said suddenly. Chi Yen looked up. "In the past, when you encountered something like this, your first reaction was to cry," Chi Heng said. "Now, you're sitting here, discussing tactics with me." Chi Yen remained silent for a moment. "Does crying help anything?" "No." "Then I won't cry." Chi Heng stared at her for a couple of seconds, then smiled. It was a smile tinged with pride. "Okay." He picked up a piece of lamb and took a bite. He said, "Tell me what to do. And your brother'll cooperate." Chi Yen nodded. "One more thing." "Go ahead." "Regarding Dad, let's not mention it for now." Chi Heng paused. "Why?" "Dad's health," Chi Yen replied. "During last year's checkup, he was diagnosed with high blood pressure and premature heartbeats. If we tell him, he'll either get extremely angry or go straight to Li Zhizhou to confront him. Either outcome is unacceptable to us." Chi Heng's lips tightened. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. Then he took a deep breath. "Okay, let's not talk about it for now." At 9:30, Chi Yen returned home. Li Zhizhou was on the phone in his study. The volume was normal. The door was open, and they were discussing work. She changed her shoes and walked over, knocking on the doorframe. "I'm back." Li Zhizhou looked up at her, smiled, and gestured for her to wait. After saying a few words on the phone, He hung up. Had a good time with your friends? We had barbecue. Chi Yen waved his phone. I took a photo. Look. The grilled fish here is still the same as always. Li Zhizhou glanced at it and shook his head with a smile. You really like it. Don't come to me if your lips get sore later. Got it. Chi Yen stepped forward and hugged him from behind. Are you done with your work? I'm going to take a shower. Go ahead and shower first. Chi Yen turned around and left the study. The moment she entered the bathroom and closed the door, her shoulders slumped slightly, just for a moment. As the hot water flowed over her, she closed her eyes, letting the water wash away any expression on her face. Her phone was on the counter, and its screen lit UPA message from Han Mingzhou. Mingyuan Investment. The actual controller is Wen Yan. The legal representative is her cousin. The registered address is in the same building as her residence. Second message. Over the past year, this company received 4 payments. 3 of them originated from a private account under Li Zhizhou's name. Total amount. Chi Yen wiped her face and read the number clearly. 76 million. She held the phone tightly in her hand. Third message. That's all for today. Tomorrow, I'll continue to investigate where this company's funds are going. How's things on your end? Chi Yen typed back. Everything's normal. He hasn't suspected anything. After a pause, she added, my brother has taken care of his part. Han Mingzhou replied with just one word. Good. No further words exchanged. Chi Yen deleted the message, cleared the chat history, and locked her phone. She looked up at herself in the mirror. Her hair was wet and stuck to her cheeks, but there weren't any tears in her eyes. Good. For the next 3 days, Chi Yan's life remained exactly the same as it had been for the past 3 years. She prepared breakfast in the morning, saw Li Zhizhou off. During the day, she cleaned the house, watched a couple of episodes of a drama, and did yoga. In the evenings, I wait for Li Zhizhou to come home for dinner. After dinner, we sit on the sofa and watch movies. I go to bed before 11 p.m. A perfect housewife. Really, but there are hidden threads unfolding behind the scenes. From Han Mingzhou, there's 1 message per day, brief but accurate. Second day. Of the 4 payments made by Mingyuan Investment, 2 were transferred to a headhunting firm. That firm landed a big deal last year. They poached 3 middle-level managers from Chi's supply chain department. Third day. The source of money in Li Zhizhou's personal account has been traced. He transferred his year-end bonus after marriage through a personal account, not through the joint marital account. The total amount was around 12 million. Fourth day. When Yen owns a property, transferred to her name in March this year. The funds came from Mingyuan Investment. In other words, Li Zhizhou used marital assets to buy her the house. When Chi Yen read this message, she was peeling an apple. The knife moved around the peel. Once, twice, 3 times. The peel fell off completely. Piece by piece. Her hand didn't tremble at all. Day 5. News came from Chi Yen had arranged to meet him at a Japanese restaurant at Nun, a place not far from Chi Corporation's headquarters. Chi occasionally ate there to avoid drawing attention. Once seated, Chi pushed a USB drive across the table. I've done the research, he said, no longer wearing his usual casual demeanor. What do you think? Tell me. Li Zhizhou has planted 3 people in Chi Corporation. Chi raised 1 finger. 5. Actually, 3 in the supply chain department, 1 in finance, and 1 in strategy. The finance guy is the most crucial, is in charge of reconciling accounts with external partners. Chi Yen frowned. Finance. Yes. I checked this year's transaction records. There were several technical service fees, small amounts, ranging from 300,000 to 500,000 each time. The payments were made to a company called Hengchang Information, another shell company. Chances are high. Chi took a deep breath. Sis, this guy's really thorough. He transferred money from his personal account, while also moving funds through Chi's accounts. He took money from both sides, working on both sides of the deal. Chi Yen tapped his fingers gently on the table. What about next week's contract? It's been delayed. Chi took a bite of salmon. I asked the legal team to submit revisions. They said the clauses related to non-compete agreements aren't clear enough and need to be redrafted. Under normal circumstances, it'll take at least 10 more days. What was his reaction? Your husband. Chi paused, emphasizing the word husband as if it were an insult. He called my father and said, "It's a minor issue. It's good that the legal team is cautious." Chi Yan's lips twitched. "He's anxious. But he can't show it." "Exactly," said Chi Heng. "The fact that he remains calm means he doesn't know what we're doing yet." Chi Yan nodded. "Brother, there's something I need to tell you in advance." The outcome of this won't just be a divorce." Chi Heng put down his chopsticks. "I want him to pay for it," Chi Yan said, her gaze as calm as an icy lake. "It's not just about vomiting out what's been eaten, I want him to lose all his capital too." Chi Heng stared at her for a few seconds. Then he put down his chopsticks and picked up his teacup. "All right." He drank it all in one gulp. "Your brother will stick with you to the end." Day 6. Everything was as usual. Chi Yan cooked braised fish at home. Li Zhizhou returned and complimented her, saying, "Your cooking skills are getting better and better." After dinner, Li Zhizhou worked on emails in his study, while Chi Yan read in the living room. It was a quiet, cozy day, but what Li Zhizhou didn't know was that, during the day, Han Mingzhou had taken action. He went to the housing management office and obtained the transaction records for Wen Yan's property. The purchase price was 1.43 million yuan. Paid in full. The funds came from Mingyuan Investments' corporate account, and Mingyuan Investments funds originated from Li Zhizhou's personal account. Li Zhizhou's personal account funds came from his income after marriage. The evidence was complete. Han Mingzhou compiled all the information into a document and sent it to Chi Yan. Encrypted. He attached a note. "Marital property transfer affair, fraudulent marriage. If we go to court, the chances of winning are high, but if you want to maximize your benefits, I suggest going beyond just a divorce lawsuit." Chi Yan replied 3 words. "How should we proceed?" Han Mingzhou's response was quick. "The losses caused by the Chi family can be addressed through commercial litigation. Your husband used the marital relationship to obtain business secrets, poach key employees, and transfer business resources. This isn't a domestic matter, but rather commercial fraud. We need to handle both issues separately. Divorce litigation is a civil matter, while commercial fraud is a criminal one. As long as one of the charges is proven, his company, his shares, and the house he bought for Wen Yan can all be recovered or frozen." Chi Yan stared at the screen for a long time. "What are the risks?" she asked. "The biggest risk is that the evidence isn't strong enough," said Han Mingzhou. "The recordings can serve as supplementary evidence, but the opposing lawyer will surely question the legality of the evidence in court. We need more direct evidence, such as written communication between him and Wen Yan, or official bank transactions." "What do we need from bank transactions?" "If we go through legal procedures, the court can obtain these records, but that requires filing a case first." Chi Yan thought for a moment. "There's another way," she typed. "His computer." Han Mingzhou didn't reply immediately. After a dozen seconds, he asked, "Are you sure?" "I know the password to his office computer," Chi Yan said. "He never guards against me. The method of collecting evidence might affect its validity." "I know," Chi Yan replied. "I don't need to take it to court. I just need to understand the whole picture, how elaborate his scheme really is. Some things that courts can obtain are only the results, but I need to see the process itself." Han Mingzhou remained silent for a while. "Be careful. Just take photos. Don't copy any files or leave any traces." "Understood." At 11:30 p.m., Li Zhizhou was asleep. Chi Yan waited until his breathing became completely regular. She was too familiar with this pattern. He would turn over in light sleep, but once he fell into a deep sleep, he wouldn't move at all. She got out of bed barefoot and went to the office. The door wasn't locked. There was a faint glow from the standby light in the office. Li Zhizhou's notebook was placed on the table, with the lid closed. Chi Yan sat down and opened the computer. The screen lit up, the password screen. She entered Chi Yan 0412. It was her name in pinyin combined with her birthday. Even the computer password was hers. The screen unlocked. The desktop was clean, with a few work folders and a browser. Chi Yan first opened WeChat on the peak, still logged in. She didn't browse the chat history. She knew what she was looking for. She typed into the search bar, Wen Yan. Messages started appearing 3 years ago. Chi Yan didn't read them all from the beginning. She skipped to the past 3 months and went through each message one by one. Most were mundane messages like, "Have you arrived? Come over tonight. I miss you." Chi Yan's fingers moved across the touchpad. her expression as indifferent as if she were reading the weather forecast. Then she saw one message sent by Wen Yan. A month ago. Regarding the boat selection. Has everything been settled with the Qi family? I mentioned it to President Zhou today. He said the cooperation can proceed at any time, once your side's channels are cleared. Li Zhizhou replied. It's almost ready. The contract will be signed next month. Once signed, we'll get the land approval for Jiangdong. Wen Yan asked. What about our plans? Li Zhizhou said. Wait until this round is over. At most half a year. I'll give you an answer. When Yen sent a voice message, Qi Yen didn't open it. But there was a picture attached. Qi Yen opened it. It was a photo of a ring. A Cartier ring. Almost identical to the one Qi Yen wore. Except with a larger diamond. When Yan's message read. Please choose one for me. I want this one. Li Zhizhou replied. Okay. I'll wait for you. Qi Yen stared at the picture. The corners of her mouth twitched slightly, not a smile. Just a muscle spasm. Then she picked up her phone, aimed it at the screen, and took a photo. Click. A silent shutter clicked. She continued scrolling down. Then she came across another crucial conversation. Li Zhizhou. I've taken care of Qi Shi's financial matters. During the year-end audit, those technical service fees will be made to look legitimate. Wen Yan. Be careful with Qi Heng. Li Zhizhou. Qi Heng. A smirk followed. He can't even tell how many floors the company has. Qi Yen took a screenshot. She then searched for Hengchang. Sure enough, there it was. A conversation between Li Zhizhou and someone named Chen Lei, detailing the methods and amounts involved in the transactions. She took screenshots of everything. 15 minutes later, Qi Yen returned the computer to its locked screen state, closed the lid, and left the study. She went back to the bedroom. Li Zhizhou was still asleep. In the same position as before, Qi Yen lay back down, pressing her phone under her pillow. Her heart beat a little faster than usual, but it wasn't fear. It was the excitement of a hunter about to close in on its prey. The next morning, Qi Yen encrypted all the screenshots and sent them to Han Mingzhou. After reading them, Han Mingzhou replied with just 4 words. Enough. Time to close the net. Qi Yen didn't reply right away. She stood in the kitchen, holding a spatula as she flipped the eggs in the pan. Is that enough? No. There's one more thing missing. At noon, Qi Yen made a phone call. Hello, Uncle Zhou. There was a pause on the other end. Yen. Zhou Yuanda, Qi Yan's father's old partner, co-founder of Qi's group, now working as a consultant. Qi Yen had always called him Uncle Zhou since childhood. Uncle Zhou. I'd like to ask you something. Go ahead. Were you the one handling the approval for the land in Jiangdong? There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. How do you know about this? I don't know much, said Qi Yen. But I need to confirm one thing. Is Li Zhizhou the one pushing for this land deal? Another long silence followed. Then Zhou Yuanda sighed. Yen, there are some things, Uncle Zhou. Qi Yen interrupted him. I'm not asking you in my capacity as Lady Li. I'm Qi Yen, the daughter of the Qi family. Again. There was silence. Does your father know about this? Not yet, but he'll find out soon. Qi Yen continued. Uncle Zhou, I need to know what plans does Li Zhizhou have for that piece of land. Zhou Yuanda sighed heavily. The approval for that land was officially applied for by the Qi family. But in reality, it's Li Zhizhou's company that's in charge of its development. Once the approval is granted, the Qi family will only receive a commission. The actual right to develop the land belongs to him. Qi Yen clenched her phone tightly. Is this clause mentioned in the contract? Yes. But it's buried deep in the supplementary agreement on page 3 of the attachments. Zhou Yuanda said. Your father doesn't pay attention to the details. When he signed the contract, he didn't finish his sentence. Qi Yen understood. Li Zhizhou wasn't just trying to undermine the Qi family and steal their money. He wanted to take control of the Qi family's most valuable asset, the right to develop that land. Uncle Zhou. Could you please hold up that channel contract for next week? How exactly? The legal department is already delaying things. But if Li Zhizhou goes straight to my father to put pressure on him, the legal department won't be able to stop him. I need you to act as my advisor and suggest delaying the contract on the grounds of compliance risks. What if your father objects? I'll handle that. Qi Yen said. Uncle Zhou, give me 2 weeks. After that, I'll bring everything to my father's attention. 2 weeks. That's enough. There was a 10-second silence on the other end of the line. All right. Zhou Yuanda said. 2 weeks. Yen Yen. Be careful. Thank you. Uncle Zhou. She hung up the phone. Qi Yen placed her phone on the table and took a deep breath. All the pieces had been moved. Now, all that remained was the final move. That evening, Li Zhizhou returned earlier than usual. When he entered, his expression was somewhat subtle, not unhappy, but rather the kind of irritation that comes from having a plan slightly disrupted. It was barely noticeable. Fleeting. What's wrong? Qi Yen asked, smiling as she brought out the soup. Nothing. There's a delay in approving a contract at the company. Li Zhizhou took the soup bowl and took a sip. Someone from Qi's legal department held up on one of the terms. Your brother signed too slowly. Qi Yen inwardly scoffed. On the surfac. She sighed. You know how my brother is always slow to act. Don't take it to heart. I know, Li Zhizhou said, patting her head gently. It's okay. No need to rush. But Qi Yen could see in his eyes that he was anxious. Very anxious. Yet he was holding back. Fine. Then let's keep delaying it. Day 9. Qi Yen arranged to meet with Han Mingzhou. They didn't meet at his home. It was too dangerous. The neighbor next door was Li Zi, Hezhou's university classmate's mother, and she occasionally visited. Qi Yen chose a tea room in a private club in the eastern part of the city. The rooms were soundproof, and there were no cameras facing the hallway. Han Mingzhou was already there. On the table lay a stack of A4 papers, printed flowcharts, handwritten timelines, and several notarized screenshots. Sit down, he said, pushing the tea towards her. Qi Yen sat down and glanced at the documents. Where have we gotten to? Han Mingzhou flipped to the first page and pointed to a flowchart with his finger. The overall pattern is clear now. By comparing the chat screenshots you provided with the business information and bank records I obtained, we can reconstruct the sequence of events like this. He pointed to the arrows in the diagram. Step 1. Li Zhizhou transferred money to a private account in installments, using his personal income after marriage. The amounts involved aren't large, 30 to 500,000 each time, so it doesn't trigger the bank's monitoring for large transactions. Step 2. The money from the private accounts is transferred to Mingyuan Investment, a shell company owned by Wen Yan. From there, the money is divided into 2 streams. One goes to headhunting firms to recruit people from Qi's company. The other is used for Wen Yan's personal expenses, including buying houses. Step 3. Through people he's placed within Qi's company, he withdraws money from Qi's corporate account under the pretext of technical service fees. This money is then transferred to Hengchang Information, another shell company. Eventually, this money ends up in his own offshore account. Step 4. He uses Qi's connections and qualifications to apply for the development rights to the Jiangdong land plot. In reality, his company is the actual holder of these rights. Qi only gets a commission for its services. Han Mingzhou put down his pen. In total, based on what we've been able to determine, the property transferred during the marriage amounts to approximately 12 million. Qi's losses are still being calculated, but a conservative estimate is at least 20 million. Qi Yen held her teacup, motionless. Is that enough? She asked. Han Mingzhou looked at her. If it's just a divorce case, that's completely manageable. With evidence of property transfer during marriage and infidelity, the court will likely award you more of the assets. You can even claim compensation for mental distress. But he paused. You said earlier that you didn't just want a divorce. Yes. Then dealing with business fraud is much more complicated. Han Mingzhou continued. It requires the cooperation of the Qi family, a formal lawsuit, and your father's involvement. Qi Yen put down her teacup. So, it's time to tell my father. Han Mingzhou nodded. But not alone. He said, you need to present solid evidence to him. He can't think it's just his daughter acting up. Mr. Qi is a businessman who needs facts, data, and proof of losses. I know. When do you plan to do it? Qi Yen thought for a moment. The day after tomorrow. My father's birthday. Han Mingzhou was surprised. Are you sure? Yes. Qi Yen said. Li Zhizhou planned to celebrate my father's birthday that day. He would act like the most filial son-in-law in the world, and I would reveal my cards during his performance. Han Mingzhou remained silent for 2 seconds. Are you sure it's not out of revenge? Qi Yen looked at him. If I were just looking for revenge, I would have woken him up that night when I heard the recording and shoved his phone in his face. Her voice was calm. I waited 9 days. Not out of impulsive anger. I needed to make sure he had no way out. Han Mingzhou looked into her eyes for a long moment before nodding. Okay. Then the day after tomorrow. I'll go with you. No need. Qi Yan shook her head. Your presence might alert him. Li Zhizhou knows you. Then, my brother will be there. Qi Yan said. He'll handle the coordination. I'll present the evidence. You just wait outside. If legal help is needed, call me anytime. Han Mingzhou stared at her for a while. Qi Yan. Have you thought it through? Qi Yan tilted her head slightly. Han Mingzhou. You've asked me 3 times if I've thought it through. Because there's no turning back from this decision. I know. Qi Yan stood up, picked up her bag, and said, 3 years ago, when I got married, there was no turning back either. The difference is back then, someone else was pushing me forward. This time, it's my own choice. She walked to the door, her hand on the doorknob. The next day after tomorrow, at Chisakadai, 6 p.m. What if something goes wrong? Qi Yan turned to look at him. Nothing will go wrong, she said. Li Zeshouth more confident he seems, the less cautious he becomes. He thinks he's almost won the game. But he doesn't realize the board belongs to me. The door closed. Han Mingzhou sat in the tea house, staring at the empty chair across from him. There was long silence. Then he organized the documents on the table and put them in his briefcase. The phone screen lit up. He sent a message to his assistant. From 6 to 8 p.m. the day after tomorrow. Keep my phone on. Answer any calls immediately. After sending the message, he picked up his now cold tea. He took a sip, then put the cup down. 3 years ago, on the day Qi Yan got married, he sat at the wedding for 3 whole hours. He watched her in her white dress, her eyes smiling warmly. He watched Li Zhizhou hold her hand and say, I do. That day, he drank an entire bottle of whiskey. The next day, he quit his job. Han Mingzhou pushed his cup aside. He stood up, put on his coat, and left the room. It was windy outside. He looked up at the sky. It was gray. It's going to rain, he murmured. He wasn't sure whether he meant the weather or what would happen the day after tomorrow. Father Qi's birthday. In the private room on the top floor of Akasakadai. The round table was covered with a white tablecloth. In the center stood a bouquet of fresh flowers and a 2-layer birthday cake. Father Qi sat at the head of the table. His hair was gray, but he seemed in good spirits. Qi Heng sat to his left, and Qi Yan took his seat to the right. Li Zhizhou arrived half an hour early, helping to arrange the venue, confirm the menu, and prepare Father Qi's favorite jasmine tea in advance. Dad, no alcohol today, he said, handing him the tea with a smile. Sister-in-law said your blood pressure just stabilized last week. Sister-in-law referred to Qi Yan's aunt, who also served as Father Qi's health advisor. Father Qi smiled and took the tea. I know. You're even more nagging than my own daughter. Li Zhizhou laughed. That can't be true. I'm nagging because I want Dad to stay with us for a few more years. Qi Heng sat nearby, fiddling with a chopstick in his hand. His expression was as casual as usual, but he moved his chopsticks incredibly fast. Qi Yan noticed that right when she entered the private room. She winked at Qi Heng. Qi Heng steadied his chopsticks. My sister's here, he said, standing up to pull out a chair. Dad's been waiting for you for ages. There was traffic, Qi Yan said with a smile, walking over and hugging her father. Happy birthday, Dad. Thank you, her father replied, patting her hand. It's great to have the whole family together. Qi Yan sat down next to her father, with Li Zhizhou across from her. She looked at his smiling face. A perfect smile. Warm, sincere, with just the right amount of filial piety and composure. Qi Yan thought, oh, if she hadn't known about that phone call, those chat messages, those 6 million yuan, that apartment, that ring that was identical to hers. She'd probably believe until her death that she'd married a good man. The acting was too good to believe. The dinner began. As each dish was served, sake, beef, abalone, all were things Father Qi loved to eat. Li Zhizhou helped his father-in-law with each dish, occasionally pointing out which one was too salty or oily. Qi Heng ate in silence most of the time, only occasionally commenting, like the beef is okay or this sake isn't strong enough. Qi Yan also smiled. Her smile was gentle and appropriate. From time to time, she exchanged glances with Li Zhizhou, showing the understanding between husband and wife. Everything seemed completely normal. At 7:15, The dessert was served. Li Zhizhou took out a gift box containing a Patek Philippe watch. "Dad, this is your birthday gift this year," he said, handing it over. "I heard you said the old watch band was loose. This is a classic model that's durable." Father Qi beamed. "This boy always goes to such lengths. It's only right." Li Zhizhou replied with a warm smile. "Dad's worked hard all your life. You deserve the best." Qi Heng stuffed the last piece of beef into his mouth and wiped his hands with a napkin. He glanced at Qi Yan. Qi Yan tapped her fingers gently under the tablecloth, a signal. Qi Heng put down his chopsticks, leaned back in his chair, and took a sip of tea. Qi Yan watched as her father put on his new watch and said with a smile, "It looks great. It suits Dad's temperament." Then she stood up. "Dad, there's something I'd like to give you too." Her father looked up. Li Zhizhou also turned to look, his face still wearing that warm smile. Qi Yan took out a folder from her badge. It was dark blue, thin, and it was impossible to tell what was inside. "It's not convenient to wrap a birthday gift," she said with a smile, "so I'll use this instead." She placed the folder in front of her father. "Want to open it?" Her father smiled, opened the folder, and took out its contents. A4 paper, printed with a flowchart on the first page. The second page is a screenshot of the bank transaction records. The third page is a screenshot of WeChat chat messages. Qi Fu's smile froze for a moment. He glanced at the arrow, company name, and amounts on the first page, then frowned. "What's this?" The atmosphere in the private room changed. Li Zhizhou still smiled, but his eyes moved. His gaze shifted from Qi Yan's face to the stack of papers, then back again. Qi Yan didn't look at him. She stared at her father. "Dad." Her voice was steady, each word clearly enunciated. "This shows where Li Zhizhou has spent the money he transferred from Qi Corporation and our marital assets over the past 3 years. The entire room seemed to come to a halt. Qi Fu's finger hovered over the second page. Qi Heng set down his teacup silently. Li Zhizhou's smile finally began to fade, but he reacted quickly. "Yan Yan." He tilted his head slightly, his tone carrying just the right amount of confusion. "What's wrong? What is this?" Qi Yan ignored him. She went over to Qi's father, bent down, and pointed at the flowchart with her finger. "This Mingyuan investment is actually controlled by Wen Yan, his college classmate and lover for 3 years. The 7.6 million yuan received by this company came entirely from Li Zhizhou's personal account after marriage. Of that amount, 1.43 million yuan was used to buy a house for Wen Yan." She flipped to the next page. "This Hengchang information is just a shell company using the Qi family's corporate account. Over the past year, 5 payments were made under the pretext of technical service fees, totaling 1 million yuan. All of this money ended up in Li Zhizhou's offshore account." Another page was flipped over. There were screenshots of chat messages. The photo of Wen Yan's ring was right there. "Please choose for me. I want this one." Qi's father's hands started to tremble. "Lo." Not from anger but from rising blood pressure. "Dad." Qi Heng stood up from the other side, placing his hand on Qi Fu's shoulder. "Don't worry. Take your time." Qi Fu's face turned red, then white again. He raised his head and looked at Li Zhizhou across from him. Li Zhizhou sat there, calm, at least on the surface. His first reaction wasn't denial, anger, or even an explanation. He smiled a faint, resigned smile, like that of a kind person who's been misunderstood. "Yan Yan." His voice remained gentle. "Where did these things come from? Who showed you this? Did someone recorded it?" Qi Yan interrupted him. She took out her phone and placed it on the table. She pressed play. Li Zhizhou's own voice came through the phone. She's just a tool. Once the Qi family's resources are in my hands, this marriage will be over too. That woman Qi Yan has no brains at all." The voice echoed throughout the room, clear, without any noise. Every word pierced everyone's ears like nails. Li Zhizhou's expression finally changed. His gentle smile was wiped away as if with an eraser, revealing nothing but paleness beneath. His Adam's apple moved slightly. "This one. 17 a.m. Qi Yan pressed pause. 9 days ago. You were on the balcony on the phone and forgot to close the door." Her voice was light, as if discussing some trivial matter. "I recorded the whole thing. 43 minutes. Not a single word was missed." The silence in the private room made the humming of the air conditioner audible. Qi Fu clenched the stack of papers in his hand. his knuckles turning white. Li Zhizhou sat upright in his chair, yet Qi Yan noticed that his left thumb was frantically rubbing against his index finger. A nervous habit of his. 3 years had passed. And she knew him too well. Dad, Li Zhizhou spoke. His voice hoarse. I can explain these things. Explain what? Qi Heng's voice interrupted him. Leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, he stared at Li Zhizhou as if seeing a worm crawling out of a gutter. Explain why 7.6 million was an accidental mistake. Or why buying a house for your lover was actually an investment for the Qi Corporation. Li Zhizhou glanced at Qi Heng, his pupils constricting slightly. He hadn't expected Qi Heng to be involved. In his mind, Qi Heng was nothing but a good-for-nothing. Qi Heng. This is a matter between Yan Yan and me. You took 20 million from Qi Corporation. Qi Heng interrupted him. Holding a piece of paper in his hand, a document taken from Qi Yan's file bag. It's the transaction records from Hengchang Information. There's the signature of the person you planted in the finance department. This isn't a matter between you two as husband and wife. This is fraud. Li Zhizhou's expression turned grim. He turned to Qi Yan. Yan Yan, don't call me that. Qi Yan's voice was soft, but it felt like a bucket of cold water thrown on him. She stood beside her father, looking down at him. Li Zhizhou. I give you one choice. Her tone was so calm that it didn't seem like she was talking to her husband. It sounded more like she was discussing termination terms with an unimportant business partner. First, you sign the divorce agreement voluntarily. All property transferred during the marriage must be returned, with compensation handled separately. You must withdraw from all Qi Corporation's projects. And the development rights to the land in Jiangdong must be returned to us. When Yan's property will be frozen and included in the division of assets. Secondly, she paused. If you refuse to sign, I'll take legal action. Divorce proceedings. Along with charges of business fraud, recordings, transfer records, chat screenshots, business registration information, all will be submitted as evidence. By then, it won't just be me you're dealing with, but also the court. You choose. No one spoke in the private room. Qi's father finally released the stack of papers. He didn't look at Li Zhizhou. With his eyes closed, his temples throbbed. Qi Heng placed his hand on his father's pulse. It was steady. Li Zhizhou sat there. The light illuminated a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. His lips moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he said nothing. He stood up. The sound of the chair being pushed back echoed loudly in the quiet room. Qi Yan. He looked at her. For 3 years, the way he looked at her was always gentle, affectionate, filled with the indulgent admiration of my wife is so cute. Now, there was no warmth in his eyes at all. They were like 2 black glass beads. You'll regret this, he said. Then he picked up his car keys from the table and walked away. The door to the private room swung open and closed again. His footsteps faded into the distance. Qi Yan stood there, motionless. Sis. Qi Heng called out softly. Qi Yan came back to her senses. She looked down and noticed her hands trembling. It wasn't fear. It was like a string that had been stretched tight for 9 days finally relaxing. I'm fine, she said. She went over to her father, knelt down, and took his hand. Dad, I'm sorry. On your birthday don't say sorry, her father said, his voice hoarse. He opened his eyes, his cloudy gaze filled with both anger and pain. I've let you down, he said. Qi Yan felt a sting in her nose. Just for a moment, she swallowed back the sadness and smiled. There's nothing to be sorry about. Starting today, nothing more. After Li Zhizhou left, Qi Yan didn't go back to her home in Emerald Bay. She asked Qi Heng to take their father home, while she took a taxi to a hotel. It was already 9 p.m. When she checked in. She left her phone on the nightstand, without charging it, and went straight into the bathroom. The hot water streamed for a long time, long enough to cover the entire mirror in mist, long enough to make her skin red from the heat. Standing under the shower, she finally allowed herself to daydream for a moment. 9 days. From 1:17 a.m. when she received that call, to tonight, when she revealed all her cards at Chabadai. During those 9 days, she had acted as the perfect wife, a calm planner, and a precise executor. She hadn't cried once. She hadn't lost control once. Now, with the hot water streaming over her head, she closed her eyes and felt something welling up from within her chest. It wasn't sadness. It was emptiness. 3 years. 1. 095 days. She gave that person her best moments, her deepest feelings, and her complete trust. In return, that person traded all those things for 6 million and a lover. Chi Yen raised her head. Water splashed against her face. It was hard to tell whether those were tears. 5 minutes later, she turned off the water, dried herself off, and stepped out wrapped in a towel. Her phone screen was on 17 missed calls, all from Li Zhezhou. 4 WeChat messages. Yen Yen. Let's talk. Where are you? Please reply. Chi Yen. You can't do this. I won't sign it. Don't force me. After reading them, Chi Yen flipped her phone onto the table. No reply. The next morning, when Chi Yen woke up, there were 6 more messages on her phone. Sent in the early hours of the morning. The tone had shifted from firm to tentative. Yen Yen. I was wrong yesterday. I lost my temper. Can we meet? I'll explain. If you don't want to meet, you can just call. Please. Chi Yen stared at those 2 words for 3 seconds. Please. 3 years ago, he had said those same words too. When she hesitated whether to quit her job and become a full-time mother, he held her hand. His eyes filled with sincerity. Yen Yen, please. Let me support you. The same words. The same person. Chi Yen clicked delete. All the messages were cleared with 1 click. Then she called Han Mingzhou. He refuses to sign. Han Mingzhou's voice came quickly as if he'd been waiting awake all along. As expected. What's next? File the official complaint. Han Mingzhou said. Come to my law firm this morning, and we'll prepare the lawsuit documents. We'll file for divorce first. As for the business fraud case, we'll wait until Qi Corporation officially files a report. Does Qi Corporation's report require my father's signature? Yes. But given yesterday's situation, President Qi probably won't delay. I'll have my brother talk to Dad today. Okay. By the way, Han Mingzhou paused. Where did you stay last night? A hotel. Starting today, change your accommodations. Don't stay at the same hotel. And don't go back to Emerald Bay. Chi Yen frowned. Is that really necessary? Li Zhezhou said something like you'll regret this when he left yesterday. Han Mingzhou's tone was calm but serious. When someone like him's cornered, they don't always play by the rules. I'm not trying to scare you, but it's better to be cautious. Chi Yen remained silent for a moment. Okay, don't hang up yet, Han Mingzhou said. I'll arrange for someone to pick you up. It's my assistant, a woman named Fang Rui. She'll drive to your hotel and take you straight to the law firm. Han Mingzhou. Did you stay up all night? There was a pause on the other end. It's none of your business. Hurry up and pack your things. The call ended. Chi Yen held his phone, his lips twitching slightly. 10 a.m. Han Mingzhou's law firm is located on the 33rd floor of an office building in the east part of the city. It's called Zhouheng Law Firm. The name is written in black letters on a white background. Simple and clear. Fang Rui brought Chi Yen to the meeting room, poured him a cup of coffee, and then left. Han Mingzhou was already there. He was sitting in front of him, holding a laptop, with 2 printed documents beside him. This is the first draft of the divorce lawsuit. He handed one of the documents to Chi Yen. Take a look. See if there's anything that needs to be changed. Chi Yen took the document and started reading it from the beginning. The claims were clearly stated. 1. To dissolve the marriage between the plaintiff and the defendant. 2. To divide the common property of the marriage according to the law. In particular, the defendant's transfer of 12 million yuan during the marriage must be fully returned. 3. The property purchased by the defendant from a third party located in a residential area in the east part of the city should be included in the division of the common property. 4. The defendant must pay compensation for emotional damage. 5. The costs of the lawsuit shall be borne by the defendant. After reading the document, Chi Yen put it down. Article 4. What amount should be filled in? I suggest 50,000. Said Han Mingzhou. It's not because you're only worth 50,000 but because courts typically award compensation for mental distress ranging from 50 to 200,000. If we state a higher amount, the court will adjust it within a reasonable range. Okay. One more thing. Han Mingzhou handed over the second document, the application for property preservation. Chi Yen glanced at it. It requested the freezing of Li Zhezhou's bank accounts, real estate, and shares. This needs to be submitted along with the divorce petition. Han Mingzhou said. Once the case is filed, the court can freeze the assets immediately. That way, even if he tries to transfer the remaining assets, it'll be too late. Chi Yen nodded. I'll sign it. She picked up the pen and signed both documents. The sound of the pen on paper was distinctly audible in the conference room. After signing, she put down the pen. Han Mingzhou. Thank you. Han Mingzhou put away the documents without looking up. No need to thank me. It's part of the service. Chi Yen stared at him. After a 2-second silence, she suddenly laughed. Fine. Remember to give me a discount. Finally. Han Mingzhou looked up at her. The corners of her mouth moved slightly, not a smile, but a slight relaxation from her usual cold expression. Regular customer. 15 off. In the afternoon, news came from Qiheng. It was just one sentence over the phone. Dad has signed. The Qi family will file a formal report tomorrow. After hearing this, Chi Yen put her phone in her pocket. She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window in the law firm and stared at the city skyline outside. The weather was beautiful today. The sky was clear, and the sunlight made the distant skyscrapers shine brightly. 3 years ago, she stood by the window of the wedding hotel and saw the same blue sky. Back then, she thought that marrying Li Zhizhou was the luckiest thing in her life. Now, she thought that the most sober moment of her life was at 1:17 in the morning, when she stood barefoot in the living room and pressed the record button. On the third day after the case was filed, the court accepted it. The order for asset seizure was issued promptly. Li Zhizhou's 3 bank accounts were frozen, his property in Emerald Bay was seized, and his shares in various companies were placed under restrictions on trading. That same evening, Chi Yen received a call from an unknown number. She didn't answer. Soon after, a text message arrived. Chi Yen, you've pushed me to my limits. What's the point for you? Chi Yen glanced at the message and added the number to her block list. On the 4th day, Han Mingzhou called. He's hired a lawyer. Who? Lu Zhengyan. Chi Yen paused. Lu Zhengyan, a well-known divorce lawyer in the industry, who had handled many divorce cases involving high-net-worth individuals. He was especially skilled at uncovering hidden tactics related to property division. Expected, said Chi Yen. It doesn't affect the overall situation. Han Mingzhou spoke in a calm tone. His assets have been preserved already. Even if he hires a lawyer, it's useless, the money is still frozen. He can only prove that those transfers were legitimate business transactions. How will he argue? Most likely, he will claim that Mingyuan investment was a normal investment activity, and that Wen Yen was merely a partner, not a lover. But the recordings will surely block that path. What about the chat messages? The lawyer will probably question the method of obtaining those recordings and argue for privacy rights. But in current legal practice, most courts accept communication records obtained from a shared residence during a marriage. Han Mingzhou paused for a moment. And we also have bank statements and business records. These can be obtained through public channels. So there's no issue of legality. Okay. Is there anything else I need to do? Nothing for now. We'll wait for the court hearing notice. What about the business fraud issue? She's already reported it. The economic investigation is ongoing. This case will take some time, but it won't affect the progress of the divorce proceedings. Understood. Chi Yen hung up the phone. She was sitting in Chi Heng's apartment living room. She was temporarily staying there these days. Chi Heng's apartment was in the northern part of the city. Li Zhizhou didn't know the exact address. Chi Heng brought 2 cups of instant coffee from the kitchen and handed one to her. What's that Li guy up to now? He's hired a lawyer. Lu Zhengyan. Chi Heng snorted. He has money to hire a lawyer, but no money to pay off Qi Corporation's debts. His money's frozen. The money for hiring the lawyer probably paid for by Wen Yen. Chi Heng raised an eyebrow. Oh. So it's a woman who's supporting him. Chi Yen didn't respond to that. She took a sip of her coffee. It was too bitter. Chi Heng never remembered to add sugar. Brother. The economic investigation team might want to talk to you. I know. I've prepared all the evidence. Information about those 5 people within Qi Corporation. The financial records of Hengchang, and the documents signed by that Chen from the finance department. Chi Heng leaned back on the sofa, legs crossed. Don't worry. Your brother knows how to get things done efficiently. Chi Yen looked at him. Bro. Thank you. Again. Chi Heng rolled his eyes. Why be polite with your brother? If you really want to thank me, take me out for barbecue for a month. Okay. Chi Heng took a sip of coffee, then suddenly said, by the way, that Han Mingzhou. Chi Yan's hand paused. What about him? Chi Heng looked at her, his gaze somewhat complicated. You really don't know why he resigned back then? Chi Yen remained silent. Chi Heng sneered. Never mind. I won't ask anymore. He stood up. I'll go order food. What do you want to eat? Anything. Chi Heng left. Chi Yen sat on the sofa, holding the overly bitter coffee, staring out the window in thought. Day 7. Li Zhizhou's counterattack had begun. It's not about going through legal procedures, that's just not what's being done. Instead, they're using public opinion to manipulate things. Suddenly, several posts marked visible only to friends appeared in Chi Yan's social media feed. They were from Li Zhizhou's university classmates. Some people marry great husbands but don't appreciate them. After hearing a few rumors, they decide to get a divorce. What a pity for Zhizhou, who meant her well. Some women really act like troublemakers. How much has he given up for her? And in the end, she calls him a tool and turns against him. It seems her brothers from her family instigated this. That Chi family's son never liked her son-in-law anyway. Chi Yen read each post. Her tone was calm, but her intention was clear: to start a public opinion war in the social media sphere, portraying Chi Yen as an unreasonable and aggressive woman, while presenting herself as a wronged husband. Chi Yen handed her phone to Chi Heng. After reading the posts, Chi Heng snorted. Nice try. They really know how to do this. Ignore them. Chi Yen said. You don't care. What's there to care about? Once the judgment comes down, these people will shut up on their own. Chi Heng glanced at her and nodded. Fine. If you say you don't care, then I won't bother. Day 10. Something had happened. Not on Chi Yan's end but with Wen Yan. That afternoon, Han Mingzhou called, his tone faster than usual. Wen Yan has run away. Chi Yan's fingers clenched. What do you mean? The property under her name was put up for sale 3 days ago. The transfer was completed today, and the buyer paid in full. Meanwhile, her bank account was emptied last night. All the money was transferred to an overseas account. Chi Yen felt a chill down her spine. Where is she? She took a one-way flight to Bangkok this morning. Silence. What about the freeze order? Chi Yen asked. Weren't those already in place? The freeze applied to Li Zhizhou's account and the property's ownership. But Wen Yan's assets weren't affected, as Li Zhizhou was listed as the defendant in the divorce lawsuit. And Wen Yan was merely a third party. There was a hint of self-reproach in Han Mingzhou's tone. I overlooked that. We should simultaneously apply for property preservation against Wen Yan as well. How much did she take with her? The property was sold for 1.3 million. There's also about 900,000 in her accounts. In total, over 2 million. Chi Yen closed his eyes. Was this arranged by Li Zhizhou? Most likely. He knew his money would be frozen. So he told Wen Yan to leave first and take whatever she could. Can we recover it? It's difficult to recover funds across borders. But it's not impossible, just time-consuming and costly. Han Mingzhou paused. If the commercial fraud case can be successfully prosecuted, the Economic Investigation Department can use international police cooperation. But that's for later. Chi Yen clenched his teeth. 2 million. That wasn't a small amount. But it was only a fraction of what Li Zhizhou had taken. How much else can be recovered? She asked. The assets frozen under Li Zhizhou's name bank accounts and the market value of his shares total about 8 million. The house in Jade Bay was purchased with a joint loan after marriage. It's registered under both names. Worth around 4 million. Adding in the amount that can be recovered through commercial fraud actions on Chi's part overall, he still owes the majority of the money. What about those 2 million from Wen Yan? Nothing can be done for now, but it can be included in the total losses and deducted from his share in the divorce settlement, said Han Mingzhou. In other words, they'll have to pay for the money Wen Yan took away. Whether or not that money can be recovered, it will be deducted from his rightful share in the settlement. Chi Yen sighed. Okay. Chi Yen. Don't rush. We still have the upper hand in this situation. She looked up at the ceiling. I know. Day 12. The court sent out the summons for the trial. The trial is scheduled for 15 days from now. Chi Yen took a photo of the summons and sent it to Han Mingzhou. Han Mingsh. You replied with 2 words. Get ready. On the day of the trial, it was raining. Chi Yen wore a black suit jacket, with her hair tied back. She didn't wear any jewelry. The ring on her ring finger had been taken off a week earlier. At the courthouse entrance, Han Mingzhou waited below the steps. He was dressed in a dark gray suit and white shirt, holding a black folder in his hand. The rain pattered against the umbrella. Qi Yan walked over to him. "Nervous?" he asked. "Not at all." Han Mingzhou glanced at her, then tilted his umbrella to cover her shoulders. "Let's go in." The courtroom wasn't very large. In the plaintiff's seat were Qi Yan and Han Mingzhou. In the defendant's seat were Li Zhezhou and his lawyer, Lu Zhengyan. When Qi Yan entered, Li Zhezhou was already sitting there. After half a month without seeing each other, he seemed thinner. His cheekbones stood out more, and there were visible dark circles under his eyes. He was still wearing the same custom-made suit, but the collar was loose, as if the buttons hadn't been fastened properly. When he saw Qi Yan enter, his gaze shifted slightly. Qi Yan didn't meet his eyes. She went to her seat in the plaintiff's section, opened the documents in front of her, and checked each page carefully. The judge entered the courtroom. The court is now in session. The trial proceeded more smoothly than Qi Yan had expected. Han Mingzhou's testimony was concise and forceful. The plaintiff and defendant got married 3 years ago. During their marriage, the defendant maintained an improper relationship with a third party, Wen Yan. The defendant also used the couple's joint assets to transfer a total of 7.6 million yuan to Wen Yan, including purchasing a property for her. The defendant also exploited their marital relationship to obtain confidential information and key resources from the plaintiff's family business, the Qi Group. This constitutes commercial fraud, and an investigation has already been initiated by the Economic Crime Department. The plaintiff requests the dissolution of the marriage, the legal division of the couple's joint assets, and that the defendant return all assets transferred during the marriage, as well as pay compensation for mental distress. The evidence includes recordings, bank statements, business registration information, WeChat chat screenshots, and records of Wen Yan's real estate transactions. Each piece of evidence has been notarized, and there's a complete chain of evidence for each item. Lu Zhengyan's response matched Han Mingzhou's predictions. The defendant admits to having improper relationships with Wen Yan, but denies that any property transfers were done with malicious intent. Lu Zhengyan stood up, speaking firmly. The transfers to Mingyuan Investment were legitimate business investments. The defendant holds hidden shares in Mingyuan Investment, as evidenced by the investment agreement. He submitted an investment agreement dated 2 years prior. Han Mingzhou glanced at it, his lips twitching slightly. The plaintiff questions the authenticity of this evidence. Han Mingzhou stood up. First, although the agreement was signed 2 years ago, Mingyuan Investment's official records show that neither the defendant nor any related parties appear in the company's bylaws or shareholder change records. Second, he flipped through the documents. In the WeChat conversations with the third party, the defendant explicitly said, "I'll give you the money to spend, and the house will be registered in your name." These aren't the kinds of statements one would make in a business investment context. Thirdly, in the recording, the defendant admitted that the plaintiff was merely a tool, used to gain access to Qi's resources through the marriage. These facts are sufficient to prove that the defendant's actions were not a business investment, but rather a deliberate attempt to transfer property. Lu Zhengyan remained expressionless, but after sitting down, he flipped his pen slightly, a very subtle movement that Qi Yan noticed. He knew the chances of winning this lawsuit were slim. It was now time for the cross-examination phase. Lu Zhengyan tried to challenge the legality of the recording as evidence. The recording was made without the defendant's knowledge or consent, thereby violating the defendant's privacy and right to communicate, he said. Han Mingzhou interrupted him. The recording was made in a common area of the couple's home, the open space connecting the living room to the balcony. The plaintiff was in their own home when they accidentally overheard and recorded the defendant's conversations. There was no intrusion into private space or use of any eavesdropping equipment. According to relevant judicial interpretations by the Supreme People's Court, this recording does not constitute evidence obtained through methods that violate others' legal rights or prohibitive legal provisions, and therefore is legitimate and admissible as evidence. The judge did not dismiss the recording as evidence during the trial. Lu Zhengyan's second attempt. The defendant believes that the WeChat chat screenshots submitted by the plaintiff were obtained by accessing the defendant's phone without the defendant's knowledge. Han Mingzhou replied again. First, these screenshots have been notarized, so their authenticity is beyond dispute. Second, as for how the evidence was obtained, the plaintiff used the household computer in the defendant's study. This computer is jointly owned by the couple and is located in their shared residence. The plaintiff used a password set by the defendant, using the plaintiff's name as the basis for the password. This shows that the defendant had no objections to the plaintiff using this device. So it does not constitute illegal intrusion. Li Zhizhou was seated in the defendant's seat. He hardly said anything throughout the trial. Lu Zheng'an was handling everything on his behalf. But Qi Yan noticed that his hand was under the table. With his right thumb constantly rubbing against his index finger joint, the rhythm grew faster and faster. He was losing control. It was time for the final statements. Lu Zheng'an made the defendant's final statement, saying in essence, the defendant admits to being at fault in the marriage. He's willing to negotiate the division of assets, but refuses to accept the plaintiff's demands for full repayment and substantial compensation. Han Mingzhou stood up. The plaintiff's final statement. He glanced at Qi Yan. Qi Yan stood up. She didn't want Han Mingzhou to speak for her. Your Honor, I'll speak myself. Han Mingzhou sat back down. Qi Yan stood behind the plaintiff's seat, looking straight ahead, avoiding Li Zhizhou's gaze. I've been married to the defendant for 3 years. During those 3 years, I quit my job and gave up my educational opportunities, dedicating myself entirely to our family. I thought I had a genuine, equal marriage. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear throughout the courtroom. Until 9 days ago, when I heard that phone call, it was only then that I realized that, from beginning to end, this marriage was nothing more than a tool for the defendant, a means to gain access to my family's business resources. 3 years of time, 3 years of sincerity, 3 years of effort, all of these meant nothing to the defendant, who saw me merely as a tool. She paused for a moment. I don't expect the defendant to give me back those 3 years. Time cannot be regained. But property can be. I've submitted all the evidence. I trust the law. That's all I have to say. Qi Yan sat down. The courtroom fell silent for a few seconds. The judge announced a recess and would deliver the verdict at a later date. When they stepped out of the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The ground was wet, reflecting the grayish-white sky. Qi Yan walked ahead, with Han Mingzhou following closely behind. Well said, he said. I was so nervous. Qi Yan replied. My palms were covered in sweat. You didn't seem nervous at all. That's good then. The two of them walked to the parking lot. Fang Rui's car was already there. Qi Yan opened the car door and glanced back at Han Mingzhou. When will the results be available? If everything goes well, in 2 weeks. Otherwise, a month. Qi Yan got into the car. She rolled down the window slightly and looked at Han Mingzhou standing outside. Han Mingzhou. After this is over, she said, I'll take you out to dinner. Han Mingzhou looked at her. The light after the rain illuminated his face, making his calm eyes shine slightly. Okay, he said. You pick the place. The window was rolled up. The car drove out of the parking lot. Qi Yan leaned back in the seat, eyes closed. Her palms were indeed sweaty, but the corners of her mouth were raised. On the day the verdict was announced, Qi Yan was in Qi Heng's apartment. When Han Mingzhou called, she was cutting a watermelon. The verdict's out, Qi Yan said, putting down the knife and wiping her hands with a towel. Go on. 1. The divorce between plaintiff Qi Yan and defendant Li Zhizhou is granted. 2. The couple's joint property shall be divided according to the law. Given the defendant's serious faults, the plaintiff shall receive 70% of the joint property. 3. The 7,600,000 yuan transferred by the defendant to a third party during the marriage is considered part of the joint property and must be returned. Of this amount, 2,200,000 yuan, which has already been taken abroad by the third party Wen Yan, must be compensated to the plaintiff by the defendant using funds from his own property. 4. The property in Feitsue Bay belongs to the plaintiff, who will also be responsible for any remaining loans. 5. The defendant shall pay the plaintiff 1,500,000 yuan in compensation for mental distress. 6. The defendant shall bear all litigation costs. After reading out the verdict, Han Mingzhou paused. You won. Qi Yan stood in the kitchen, holding her phone. The juice from the watermelon flowed slowly down the cut surface. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm yellow glow on the floor. I won, she repeated, her voice soft, as if speaking to herself. After hanging up the phone, Qi Yan stood in the kitchen for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. She just stood there, feeling that sensation, that feeling as if her chest was being lifted upward from the bottom of the water. It wasn't excitement. It was the end. Truly, the end. Everything proceeded as planned. Li Zhizhou didn't appeal. Lu Zhengin must have told him that the evidence was too solid. Appealing would only result in a more humiliating defeat. Regarding the commercial fraud case, after 2 months of investigation, Li Zhizhou was prosecuted on charges of embezzlement. All 5 people placed by the Qi family were dismissed from their positions. Chen Lei from the finance department was dealt with separately for his role in facilitating illegal financial transactions. Under the combined pressures of frauds, assets and restricted shareholding rights, Li Zhizhou's company could no longer operate. Partners withdrew their investments, and customers left. 3 months later, the company filed for bankruptcy. The land in Jiangdong was reclaimed by the Qi family, and its development rights were returned to their rightful owners. Wen Yan never returned to the country. 20 days after the divorce judgment took effect, Qi Yan moved back to Emerald Bay. It wasn't because she couldn't bear to leave the house that the judgment had awarded it to her. She wanted to renovate it completely, erasing every trace of him. On the day she moved back, Qi Heng drove her there. "Are you sure you won't stay a few more days?" he asked, carrying the last box out of the trunk. "My sofa is actually quite comfortable. Your sofa makes my back hurt," Qi Yan said, smiling as she took the box. Qi Heng said with a chuckle, "That's because you're too thin." He parked the car and went inside. The house was empty. Li Zhizhou's belongings had already been taken away, arranged by Qi Heng before the verdict was handed down. Qi Yan stood in the middle of the living room, looking around. The floor-to-ceiling windows were the same. The layout of the living room was the same too, but on the balcony, the spot where he used to stand and talk on the phone was now empty. Qi Yan walked over, pushed open the balcony door, and stood by the railing. The wind blew in, bringing with it the coolness of early spring. "What are you thinking about?" Qi Heng leaned against the balcony frame. "Nothing much," said Qi Yan. "I just feel like it's been so long. It's only been 2 months. Yes." She smiled. "Only 2 months." Qi Heng looked at her profile. "Sis. What do you plan to do from now on?" Qi Yan thought for a moment. "I'll renovate this house first," she said. "Then I'll go back to the Qi family." Qi Heng was momentarily stunned. "Really?" Qi Yan turned to look at him. 3 years ago, I left because I thought someone else would take care of our home. Now, that person isn't here anymore. It's my turn to go back." Qi Heng stared at her for 3 seconds. Then he laughed, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "Fine. Then your brother has even more reason to stay idle from now on." As if, "Hey," the siblings exchanged a few words on the balcony. The sun grew warmer. In the evening, Qi Heng left. Qi Yan sat alone in the empty living room. Her phone lit up. A message from Han Mingzhou. "Have you moved in yet?" "Yes." "Then, about that dinner you mentioned." Qi Yan smiled as she read the message. "Saturday night." She typed. The typing bubbles on the other end appeared several times, taking longer than usual. Finally, the reply came. "Okay, I'll pick the place." Qi Yan stared at those 4 characters for a while. Then she placed her phone on the coffee table and leaned back against the sofa. The ceiling was whitey, a pure, blank white. Nothing else existed there. Everything could begin anew. Qi Yan closed her eyes, but the curve of her lips remained unchanged. Outside the window, it grew darker. In the distance, lights began to shine one by one. Then 2, then 1,000. Qi Yan opened her eyes, stood up, and went to the balcony. She closed that door tightly. From now on, no more calls at 1:17 in the morning would break in. Never again.